Hi, my name is Gianpaolo Albanese. I'm a solutions architect at AWS, and today I'm joined by Jonathan Dedman from Cloudhouse. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, GP. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation with you today about how we've helped AWS clients solve some of the really challenging migration problems.
Yeah, sounds great. Can you tell us a little bit about Cloudhouse? What makes your company unique?
Yeah, absolutely. So our main focus is trying to help clients remove the dependency between their applications and their core infrastructure. So the idea being that you can start to enable modernization to happen in a more effective way without having any blockers that are going to cause issues during a migration process or a modernization process.
Got it. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the products that you guys provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are three products that we have. So the first is Foundry. So Foundry is our self-service packaging pipeline tool. And what it's designed to do is to enable people to transform their packaging pipelines by enabling a much more automated process where they're going to be able to put an image into the pipeline, process it, drive it through, and have a deployable package at the end of the process. And we do this using some of the skills we've learned with some of our other products around Windows workloads. But we're also doing this now for Linux workloads as well, which is new for us.
Oh, wow.
But the whole idea is to try and remove some of the pressures around enabling applications to be packaged and speed up the whole process of doing that. The second is called Guardian. And Guardian is our configuration monitoring tool.
Okay.
It's really designed to try and understand what's happening in an IT estate and enable that to be tracked and monitored and controlled to enable people to ensure that they're meeting their obligations around particular configuration requirements, but also to be able to ensure that they're meeting the particular compliance requirements if there are particular things like financial services requirements and regulations that need to have a particular focus associated to them. And Guardian is a tool that enables them to get that evidence and be able to process it and drive forward.
Okay.
The third product, which we've had for the longest time, is called Alchemy. And Alchemy is our mechanism for packaging up applications and enabling them to be taken off legacy operating systems and moved to more modern operating systems, usually into EC2 instances of the latest Microsoft Windows servers, but also being able to, in effect, have those applications moved without any changes or impact. So it's really a tool to help try and drive modernization without any issues in terms of being able to have those legacy applications running as they always have.
Got it. I want to talk a little bit about Alchemy, specifically because I want to discuss a solution architecture that your team developed for customer dealing with end of support.
Yeah.
Especially end of support applications or end of support operating system. Can you start explaining a little bit about the challenges that you see customer face when you get engaged with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are obviously some main requirements around that. So first is always going to be around how do you get those business critical applications off an environment that is going to be end of support or is coming to end of support.
Correct.
How do you keep them running in a way that is going to be compliant and is going to ensure that you're not impacting your business operations while doing it? So being able to take an application, enable it to keep running by gathering all of its dependencies up and being able to ensure that it runs as it always has is a real important process associated to this. We've worked with AWS for a number of years, done this for hundreds of AWS clients, where we're able to take their applications and move them as they are, unchanged, into Windows inside EC2 without any modification or changes to the code base or issues around the outside of that. That becomes really valuable when you're talking about legacy applications that have been around for a long time. You may not have access to the code base. They may be unsupported COTS applications that you are unable to get any support for to be able to modernize them. And what we're able to do is take those applications, package them up, and enable them to be deployed into whatever environment best suits the client without any impact to the business activities that are going on.
Got it.
So because there are no changes to the way the systems operate, the applications work in the way they always have, you're removing any pressures around having to retrain any staff, change any business processes around it, so you can ensure that those are being kept up to date and continue to provide business value despite being moved into a more modern environment.
Yeah. So I deal a lot with migration and modernization type of engagements with customers. I have seen in many occasions where customers are want to kind of move to the cloud.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there are some applications have to keep on-prem,
Yeah.
on-premises data centers just because they can't move it.
Yeah.
So I'm just imagine trying to migrate this end of support application where customer have no modernization option
Yeah.
must be pretty challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we can really come in and help with Alchemy. It's been designed from the ground up to be a tool that enables people to escape those legacy environments, get away from legacy data centers or underlying operating systems, and move into a modern world without impacting what drives their business, which is the applications that everything runs on. So being able to take those, modernize them, drive forward with those, just enables them to keep everything compliant, keep everything modern. And what we're very proud of with Alchemy is that it will continue to support clients into the future as well. It's not a one and done.
Yeah.
In effect, what we're doing is enabling them to continue using this as new operating systems come out further down the line without any impact to what they're trying to do.
Right. I'm really excited now to kind of talk about the architectural
Yep.
part of it. So about we start doing a whiteboard discussion and see how your product fits, specifically when dealing with application migrations and modernization.
Perfect.
So as we can see here, we got a customer, most likely enterprise data center. All right. The common scenario that we kind of see is that many customers successfully migrate their environments into AWS. And as you can see here, we can use different services. We have the Amazon Elastic VMware service, which allows customers to bring their own licenses for VCF from Broadcom and bring it right into AWS. And that's an easy transition.
Yeah.
So a lot of customers prefer to do that because they don't really have to train anything. They're already accustomed with VMware.
Yeah.
They already know how to run that environment. So they'll pick that solution, which is a great way for them to kind of move very fast
Yes.
into AWS. Customers are migrating, pretty much their databases. The database migration service, again, another great tool, allows for customers to migrate their relational database to NoSQL databases. Again, there is a lot of forklift there. It's not a easy transition, but again, we see a lot of customers leveraging that tool to migrate into AWS.
Yeah.
And my favorite is the application migration service, because with my application migration service, you literally deploy an agent onto a host. It doesn't matter if it's a VMware, Hyper-V, or any other server or virtual machine running on any other cloud, and basically you just move the application and with the server bits into AWS. And that's something that customers are doing, and it works very well. And then at the end, we have AWS Transform, that literally what it allows customers to do is now using agentic AI to basically transform their applications like mainframes, VMware systems, .NET applications into AWS in more cloud native type of solutions. Going to serverless and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what I'm actually seeing more and more is I'm seeing a lot of customers, for example, that have older operating systems. So even though they can use all this construct to migrate into AWS, but because they're running on an older operating system, now, like you were mentioning before, there are some compliance issues, regulatory issues, and they cannot really do that. Even though they can move it, it kind of creates additional problems. It doesn't solve that problem of running older operating systems in their environment. For example, I want to bring up like an healthcare customer. A lot of the healthcare customers that we work with, specifically if you're dealing with hospitals or pharmaceutical companies, they are running older operating systems. Specifically, I have one customer that was running Windows 2003 server. All right, their security team obviously is extremely concerned because they're running a deprecated older operating system, but their application is critical for their environment. And so, can you tell us how can Cloudhouse help to close that gap? Specifically when you're running those critical business applications in an older operating system to cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all starts back on the original server. So you want to come in and say, your 2003 server, we want to transform that. So we've got to have a quick look at what's going on here. So we'll take a look at that server and we'll say, okay, what's on that server? How's the application running? What dependencies does it have associated to it? And we'll start to build up an understanding of the application. Normally that's done with a sort of discovery session or a consultancy phase to start with, that we treat at the very start of the program to just understand the scope, and also let the client understand the scope, most importantly, so they're confident about the solution that we're offering. We take a look at the environment, we understand what applications are installed, what they need to have ported over to the new environment they're going to be working in, and we build up a dedicated statement of work that defines all of the various elements that we're going to be picking up and moving, and our team understand all of the elements that need to be consumed. Obviously, we've been doing this for a number of years, 15 years this year, so we have a lot of history in terms of a lot of the applications that we see, but every customer is different. Every customer has a slightly different environment, a slightly different history, or slightly different versions that we then need to pick up and handle. So we always start with that, getting an understanding of what's there. Once we have that understanding, we then move into a packaging phase. So we'll take that understanding of the dependencies, the application itself, take the binaries, package them up into an Alchemy package. And that's one of our engagements with our professional service team. So again, we'll be working with the client to be able to understand what the special requirements are, if there are any challenges associated to it. But our team do the packaging to take the workload off the client, because invariably they're very busy, as you say, with other challenges they need to solve. So we can take that workload away, process it, turn it into an Alchemy package, and then work to help the client get that deployed into the environment that they want to deploy into.
Let me ask you, so in this area here, when you do the discovery phase and you do the packaging component, how involved is the customer? I mean, how does the customer get involved in the process? I mean, is it helping gathering some information, or is it working on actually creating the pack? I mean, what is the role of the customer in this phase?
Well, it really depends a little bit on how well the customer knows the application. And traditionally, in the environment you described, healthcare customer that's been using it for a number of years, they probably don't have the skill sets anymore. They don't have the knowledge of the application. So what we've built up over the years is the capability to, in effect, take the information and the image from the customer and basically extract the application as it runs without the client's involvement, beyond providing us the image to work from. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is enable it to work in the way that it always has, and it's a lot easier to do that from an environment where you know it works, rather than trying to deploy it into a new environment from install media or something like that. Configuration will have changed over time, and trying to keep up to date with that and have that deployable is very difficult. So the whole idea is gather that information from the client, we will do all the extraction and the processing and the creation of the package, and then what we can do is move that into the deploy phase, where we actually take that application package and we'll run that up and enable it to be deployed into EC2 for the client. At that point, we'll engage with the client to go through UAT processes and similar like that. But at this point, it's in their AWS estate. So they can then start to work with it in their environment, run through the tests, and get confident that the solution is going to work for them.
I really like this, because let's say that a customer is using, for example, the Amazon Elastic VMware service, and now has moved most of the assets into AWS. Using that, now they can kind of reach out to Cloudhouse. They can help out with the old type of application running on an older operating system, but now they can migrate in a newer OS in the MVS, or if they pick, they can go EC2, which again, it's another great solution, a way to kind of bridge that gap, which I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile mentioning, you know, we're talking about moving from a 2003 environment up to a Server 22, Server 25 environment in AWS. So with that comes all of the security benefits of moving to a new operating system. And also we have capability inside the Alchemy package to apply some extra security around the outside as well.
So I'm kind of curious, what does the customer see? So once you create that package, what does the customer get?
They get their old application working in the way that it always has. As I say, there was no change to any of the source code, no change to any of the screens that people interact with, no change to any of the processes that are going on. All we're doing is wrapping the application and enabling it to be deployed into a modern Windows estate and run as it always has. So there's no change to the end user. They'll have all the shortcuts and things like that that they're used to be able to interact with the application. The same screens working in the same way, possibly in a more effective and more stable way. We've seen that with a number of clients. It does depend on the application and how it's been coded, of course. but there is, in effect, a much more secure, modernized framework associated to it. You're obviously running on more scalable infrastructure.
Sure.
That comes from moving to AWS from a legacy data center.
Yeah.
So you can scale up and be a much more appropriate to it. We've also seen clients move into fault-tolerant environments inside AWS that they weren't able to do on-prem.
Okay.
So it's another mechanism where they can start to build some resilience into their operations and enable those to move forward in a much more successful way.
So, again, like you very well know, security patches, updates, maybe new operating system. So now, whatever operating system the new application or package has been deployed, now that operating system is becoming also end of support. How easy is it for a customer to move, right, that package now into a newer, better operating system? I mean,
Well, the whole idea of the package, as I mentioned earlier, is to be completely portable.
Okay.
So you're able to take that package and deploy it through whatever your preferred deployment tools are onto whatever environment you want to do. Obviously, we provide support and updates to the tool itself, but unless there's severe changes to how Microsoft are writing their operating systems, the package will be able to lift and shift into a more modern infrastructure. Obviously, recently we've seen a lot of clients moving away from Windows 10 to Windows 11.
Yes.
Most cases, the packages just lift and shift.
Okay.
Desktop environments in the same way, and servers are exactly the same. As long as the core APIs that are underneath aren't changing significantly, the package can be deployed. If there are any challenges, obviously that's where we can come in and support and be able to modernize that and update as appropriate.
Right. Thank you so much, John. This was extremely comprehensive, and now I can see how we can kind of help customers, especially if we see those scenarios where maybe modernization is not an option because they're running these older operating systems or older application, but at least now they have some sort of a solution they can leverage until maybe they move to a SaaS service, or maybe they have time to kind of rewrite the application in such a way that it's more cloud friendly.
Well, the other side of it is that actually what you're doing is enabling clients to remove the risk. We've seen an awful lot of things recently in the press around breaches because people are still running legacy environments. In effect, what we can do with Alchemy is remove that risk, because you can move from a vulnerable operating system up into a cloud environment running the latest Microsoft operating systems with all the latest security patches around it.
Yeah.
And you can shut down those old data centers. You remove the vulnerability and the risks associated to it, but you're not compromising how you're operating, how your business is running, how the processes are being performed. It can be a case of just buying time. So it's a case of, we need to spend some time developing the new solution, driving it forward and coming up with something that's more cloud native in terms of structure. But absolutely what we can do is reduce the risks associated to having to maintain the legacy estate to run the legacy application while the new solution's being developed. So in effect, you can take your application off the legacy environment, move it up to AWS and run for as long as you need to until the new application or new environment is up and ready to go. Some clients choose to keep running because the application just does what they need.
Sure.
But if you're looking to modernize, it's a way of greatly reducing the risks associated to your estate, just purely because we're able to get rid of those legacy environments.
So, John, I just want to ask you, probably a concern the customer will bring up about performance. How these running this package, this quote-unquote, let's call it containerized application, impact the system?
Absolutely, and it's an important concern. Obviously, at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your applications are still going to be as performant, if not better, than they were previously, but you also don't want massive overheads associated to it.
Correct.
The nice thing about Alchemy is it's a really compact wrapper that sits around the application. So what we'd normally see is around a 2% CPU overhead associated to usage, so not significant in terms of the cycles that are going on. And then there's probably 10 megabytes of hard disk space, about the same of RAM needed to run our componentry around the outside of the application. So the actual pressures and overheads that are being applied are very minimal in terms of what's actually coming down the line and impacting the clients. Obviously, what you're doing by moving to a more modern server in AWS anyway is you're going to be able to scale that in a much more appropriate way than you ever could in the past, as I mentioned earlier. But obviously, you'll be in a more modern environment with more resources anyway.
Sure.
So things should move in a more effective way.
Sure.
We can't guarantee that because it is a little dependent on how the application runs. But normally our clients, as I say, will see no significant impact to performance. in some cases even better performance as how things are running.
Got it.
And you can be much more flexible in terms of how you scale as well.
Yeah, and plus with CloudWatch, we can kind of monitor the both the CPU memory usage, network throughput, so customers can kind of like get a feel of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So, you know, as it does a data gathering or time lapse,
Yeah.
with the usage, they can kind of determine. But based on what you're saying, customers don't see any impact when running Alchemy package.
No, absolutely. And as you
Okay.
say, they can use
That's
any
great.
of the standard AWS tooling to be able to monitor that performance and understand what's happening and be able to track and understand what's going on. We're not
Excellent.
impacting any of those tools.
Excellent.
They can use those standard capabilities to be able to do that.
So this is great. You know, I appreciate also the additional piece of information, but I'm really interested to understand a little more. What does an actual migration process look like for a
Yeah.
customer? So if you can walk us through,
100%.
you know, how that works.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the simplest option is we start with the discovery phase, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And the discovery phase is probably going to be, again, it depends on the complexity of the application, but it's going to probably be in the lines of a simple discovery engagement of around an hour, working with the client
Okay.
to understand the application. Maybe some extra discovery once the project kicks off as we start to see what's actually there and if there's any questions we need answering.
Yeah.
But usually that phase is very quick in terms of getting things moving, capturing the information and then being able to start that packaging process.
So can you tell me a little bit what does a discovery really entails?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing with the customer?
Yeah, so the engagement with the customer is very much focused on, firstly, understanding what environment the application is currently running in.
Okay.
So if we know that it's a 2003 server, like we were talking about, what services are running, what componentry is there, what other supporting applications are present that may be needed, and understand if there's any active work going on to modernize those other solutions. You talked about replacing databases
Sure.
with more modern solutions. If you're talking about an application that's got a database back end, is that being modernized independently? Because what we can do with Alchemy is start to redirect to the new database structure with the application not knowing anything about that. So we can be clever from that
Okay.
perspective, but we need to understand what the overall goals of the client
I
are
understand.
associated to it. But yeah, so that's why we do a detailed discovery, is to try and focus in on those elements and make sure that that flows through. Once we have that process complete, we'll then start the packaging process. And again, this isn't where we need any direct involvement from the client themselves.
Okay.
And the other thing that we can do is, because we have a team, we can actually do this in parallel and have multiple packaging activities going on at the same time. So if the client has more than one application that they're working on, they can have two packaging processes or more going on at the same time that we can then support and drive through. Again, just tries to reduce the time frame of the overall program, but make sure the client is getting the fastest response in terms of getting those applications packaged up and deployed.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, this is all done in our environment. We can work collaboratively through AWS with the client to be able to get access to environments. There are some challenges in terms of how some clients can work with us, just purely because of the restrictions they have on their environments and how we're allowed to access. But we've worked with clients with the complexity of, in effect, they've had to supply us with a laptop that connects to their environment. But again, it depends on what security restrictions the client puts in place. If we can work completely independently, we can work much faster. That packaging process can extend if there's some additional security challenges put in place, but it's not something we're not used to. It's
Got
something
it.
we do on a regular basis.
Excellent.
Obviously, what happens at the end of that process is we'll then hand over to the client to do some testing. So there'll be a phased UAT test. Again, could potentially be done in parallel if the client's got the resources available. And that enables the client to then move as fast as they can move in terms of getting things going. And we can scale as appropriate to make sure that's best supported. But this will be the point where it's deployed into the client's EC2 environment,
Yeah.
onto a Windows environment that they're happy to run into. We don't take responsibility for any of the infrastructure. It's the client's responsibility to set that up,
Yeah.
principally because they're the ones that know how they want it set up.
Sure.
We work with whatever they've got set up and be able to deploy into that. So again, we're not enforcing anything on the client. It's very much a case of how they want to structure their
Yeah.
infrastructure with AWS.
One of the things that come up in my head right now is that, let's say they go through UAT testing, now they're deployed in production, right? They think they tested everything.
Yeah.
And obviously, because it's an older application, or maybe the end user, right, is probably trying a feature that maybe wasn't tested and now fails.
Yeah.
How can Cloudhouse help them now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good thing is that we expect that.
Okay.
It's part of
Okay.
the cost, particularly when you're talking about older applications. You're going to be looking at applications that probably don't have a detailed test plan.
Correct.
They're stuck on an old environment that they've been
Correct.
stuck on for years. They just work. You hope they don't fall over or crash. But once we get to that point, that's where the UAT process comes in. And obviously through the UAT, we'll work with the clients and resolve any issues as they come
Okay.
up. But after the UAT is completed and we've done the handover, there is a warranty phase associated to the package,
Okay.
which is normally we say around 30 days
Okay.
to be able to let clients be able to build up and test as appropriate. It really depends on what the client's usage is going to look like. And then obviously beyond the warranty period, we have full support. So if there are any issues, changes to environment, issues with the application, updates that need to be applied, we have full support going forward from that point to be able to then manage and drive that forward and make sure the client isn't trying to struggle to resolve issues by themselves. We're happy to support that and drive that through associated to it.
This is extremely helpful. I mean, I really appreciate the cycle, specifically helping customers. Any final thoughts on what customers should consider when evaluating the solution?
Well, there's always going to be, particularly if you're talking about a large legacy estate, there's going to be a number of applications that are going to need to be covered. Hence why we can do the multiple packaging flows to try and keep life as simple as possible.
Gotcha.
Typically, if you're talking about a very large migration, there's potentially going to be tens, if not hundreds of servers that need to be determined if they need to be modernized. Some applications will just lift and shift fine, don't need Alchemy, and that's fine. We're happy to not handle those.
Correct.
We're here to handle the ones that are the real blockers. Also, if there are elements that are going to be modernized, like the databases or other elements, we can then take that into perspective and ensure the clients are only needing Alchemy for the specific reasons that they need it. In addition to that, there's going to be discussions on what the security requirements are around the outside of it, how the infrastructure is going to look, and we'll work with the AWS PS team or the partners, whoever are doing the migration work, to make sure that we're fitting nicely into that plan and ensuring the clients are getting the infrastructure that they need at the end of the day. But the key elements that need to be thought about are really where you want things to run, how you want them to run, and how you want that estate to modernize into the future as well.
Thank you so much, John. John, this was extremely helpful. I think it gives our viewers a comprehensive understanding of what Cloudhouse provides and how you guys work with AWS to kind of help customers really deal with those complex migration challenges. So thank you again to join us today.
Thank you very much indeed, GP. Thanks.